John actually may put me to sleep in a good way. Smoothing, like soothing.
Can you imagine if he was your dad and he's reading you bedtime stories? You would totally just like, right, John?
I'll never make it.
Does your wife ever get to read, or do you always do the reading?
My children are now almost adults, so I'm not allowed to read it. Good evening, everyone. My name is John Tabes, and I'm the event coordinator here at McNally Robinson Booksellers. One moment. Now everybody online can actually hear us. Thank you all so very much for being here to celebrate our first book launch of the fall. And I realize that, like myself, many of you are still clinging on to the summer with all possible strength, but now this is our first launch, so it is officially the fall for us in the book industry at least. So I'm terribly sorry, but at the same time, I could not think of two better people to celebrate this with. We are here to celebrate, of course, the launch of The Stone Child, Book 3 in the Misewa Saga by David A. Robertson at this event, hosted by Colleen Nelson. You may applaud. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that McNally Robinson Booksellers is based in Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. And in addition, of course, McNally Robinson rests on the land once occupied by the Métis community of Roostertown. I am the least interesting person you will hear from tonight, so I'm just going to quickly run through some procedural notes for the evening before I turn things over to two wonderful guests. So to give you a sense of what will happen here tonight, David will pop up behind this podium and read a section from The Stone Child and speak a little bit about it. He'll then move along to a conversation with Colleen Nelson, which will take place just over to my left. And following that, there'll be an opportunity for all of you to ask questions. Now, to ensure that everybody watching online can actually hear the questions, I'm going to ask you to ask me the questions. And then I'm going to repeat them just so that everybody can hear properly. With that in mind, you will have amazing questions and amazing comments, and I will not do justice to them. So I will just ask you to keep them relatively short and to the point, and then you'll have so many opportunities to actually talk to David at length when we move him to the signing table after the event. Following that, we'll just ask you to remain in place for one moment at the end of the event while we bring David over to the table, at which point you may descend. Now, I should point out that we do have two contests going on here tonight as well. So when you came in, you will have each found a ballot on your chair. Now, if you fill out that ballot, just put your name on it. It asks for your email, it asks for your phone number. We don't actually need that. We just don't have a graphic designer here this week. So once you filled out your name, just put it in the box that's right over there. And near the end of the event, we'll draw for 3 copies of the Misewa Saga. Well, the three books in the Misewa Saga. And if you're watching online via YouTube, just communicate with David's publisher, Tundra Books, via Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you would like, at Tundra Books. And that's in the chat on the YouTube stream. And you will also have an opportunity to win those 3 books. Just tag at Tundra Books on all platforms. Now, I will introduce tonight's participants. So in The Stone Child, it's a race against time to save Eli in the 3rd book in this award-winning Narnia-inspired Indigenous middle grade fantasy series. And one of the most fantastic things about working here is getting to see just what an influence and what an impact the Misewa Saga is having on readers young and old, to the point where very soon we'll likely be speaking of other book series that are Misewa Saga inspired middle grade fantasy series. Your host for this evening is the wonderful Colleen Nelson, a teacher and author from Winnipeg. Her novels include the Saskatchewan Young Readers' Choice Award and McNally Robinson Book of the Year for Young People winner Harvey Comes Home, the Governor General's Award finalist Harvey Holds His Own, and most recently, Harvey Takes the Lead. Her most recent middle grade title, The Undercover Book List, was selected as one of CBC's Best Books of 2021. Some of you may have heard of David A. Robertson. He is the author of numerous books for young readers, including Governor General's Literary Award winners On the Trapline and When We Were Alone. The Barren Grounds, the first book in the middle grade Misewa Saga series, was shortlisted for many awards, including the Governor General's Award, the TD Award for Children's Literature, and the Ontario Library Association's Silver Birch Award. It received a starred review from Kirkus and was a Kirkus, NPR, and Quill and Choir Best Middle Grade Book of 2020, as well as a US BBY and Texas Lone Star selection. The Great Bear, the second book, was also shortlisted for the Ontario Library Association Silver Book Award, a sought-after speaker and educator, and author of another 5 million books that we're not actually referencing right now. He has also been the winner of the Writers' Union of Canada's Freedom to Read Award. He's a member of Norway House Cree Nation, and we are so happy that he currently lives here in Winnipeg. Please give a very warm welcome to David A. Robertson.
So I was gonna pop up, should I go down there and then stand up quickly?
If you would like, dramatic entry.
I'll just taste it. Thanks, I picked what I was gonna read just now. Wow, first of all, this is so nice. It's been, I was just messaging with a friend earlier. It's been over 3 years since we've had an in-person launch. For me, and it's so nice to be back here and to see all you in person. We've gone through a lot over the last couple of years, and I don't know, I feel like this is just a really nice, it gives me a nice feeling. Feels like things are a little bit back to normal, and it just I was so excited all day for this. So and then of course there's a little bit of like, is anybody going to show up? So thanks for showing up. But no, this is great. And being in a place like McNally's, you know, there's a lot of really great independent bookstores here in the city. McNally's has a special place in my heart. I've had most of my, if not all of my book launches here. And they've always been incredibly supportive of local authors. They've always given us, you know, a lot of attention, a lot of care. You know, you walk in here and you feel like family. My wife and my kids come here without me, and they all, you know, recognize them and pay attention to them and make fun of me in the process. So that's also. If you follow my wife's Instagram, you'll see a lot of videos of me sleeping and other videos that kind of poke fun at me, which is I like that. So feel free to also do the same if you ever see me sleeping. But no, I'm really happy to be at McNally's. So and I think that, yeah, what I'd like, why don't you give the McNally's a little round of applause, because that's good stories. And John. He's in. John.
Did you see how flexible he was when he went under the court?
I did not.
It was like Cirque du Soleil.
What else?
It was very
What else
impressive.
can't you do?
Yes.
You're flexible too? Oh my gosh. But yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for Tim McNally's for doing the work that you do, and then a couple other people just I want to acknowledge. You know, first of all, you know, obviously my family makes a lot of this possible. My mom's here. She's been to almost all my launches as well, and my mother-in-law is in the back there, and I have a great family, and of course my wife, who I you know, this is my full-time job now, and she keeps a lot of things running at home while I'm either writing at my desk or doing a lot of traveling, and so, you know, she's not here to thank, but well, there's my father-in-law too back there too. So, but it's, so I couldn't do this without family. So I just want to acknowledge my family for the incredible support that they give me, and my agent, who, you know, she's not here, but Jackie, you know, she's a Westwood Creative. She's amazing, and of course the publisher Tundra. You know, and all the people over there. If they're watching, there's a lot of them over there. That it's a great team. Of course, Lynn and Peter and people you don't know. You know, you wouldn't. These names mean nothing to you, but they're great to work with, and they're my editors who help make books that I write legible and readable. So you know, I really appreciate them, and they've been great with me. So Tundra's has been a great publisher to work with. And the Misewa Saga has been such an incredible experience. You know, this is a series that first came out about two and a half years ago, or what is it? 2020? Yeah, 29, really? No,
Or the-
was it? I don't remember.
I think it was.
It's been so
It was.
long. Anyway, it's been out for a little while. And but it's a series that, just to give you a little bit of background, I told Colleen I want to preemptively answer any questions that she asked for me, but this is a series that I've been wanting to write for a little while. I've been thinking about for a long time, and it was originally supposed to be a trilogy. So when I look at the series here, and I'm talking with Stone Child tonight, I actually look at it as the end of a trilogy. And then what we're going to be doing is starting a new trilogy, continuing on with the same characters. But it'll be at least 6 books. So there's going to be more. I don't know if you knew that or not, but there's going to be 4, 5, and 6 coming out in the next 3 years, which I'm very, very excited about. But this initial trilogy was something that, this series has been a labor of love. It's a way for me to infuse some of the books that really inspired me when I was younger. Books that, I don't think it would be a surprise to anybody to know that Narnia was an inspiration to, for sure, the Barren Grounds, and then traditional stories that I've been learning over the years from the Cree perspective, and the constellations and the stories behind them, those beautiful stories of creation and the morals that they teach, and the ways that they explain the world that we're living in, are really amazing stories. And that was the catalyst for the series, was learning these stories and thinking more people need to know about them. And so the Barren Grounds is an adaptation of the Fisher Star constellation. The Great Bear is adaptation of the Great Bear constellation. And this one is actually an adaptation of the Sweat Lodge constellation. So anyway, so that
You kind of.
is it answered.
you
I
just
answered that.
answered
Sorry,
all
that's
of
all. I'll read now. But so the Great Bear was the middle part of this trilogy, and as such, it ended on a pretty big cliffhanger if you read the Great Bear. And so I can't read much from this because I don't want to give away too much. But what I want to do is just read you near the beginning of the Stone Child. I'll get as far as I get bored of myself reading. And it's just a scene where Morgan has called on Emily to come help her with Eli, who's not been rendered unconscious because his spirit's been taken. And she was running back to Misewa to try and get help from her buddy Arik. So this is a scene where she's kind of going back to Misewa to get some help. So here we go. This is from chapter 3. Morgan and Eli had now been to the Barren Grounds almost 20 times, and it no longer felt like a big deal to cross it. The journeys across the Barren Grounds in the winter were longer, but although Morgan was running, it seemed to her that it was late summer or autumn right now. She didn't feel she was getting there any faster. It was as though she were running in slow motion. If only she were really fit, like Emily, who was a hockey player. Look at how fast she'd gone to Morgan's house. Sure, Morgan had walked countless miles in the North Country, but walking and running were 2 different things. What kept her going, especially when her legs started to burn, threatening to give out, was the thought of Eli. He was probably already dangerously dehydrated. While Morgan inched closer to Misewa, she did another sort of calculation. Not Misewa math. She tried to remember how long the body could survive without water or food. She'd Googled it once after Ochik had told her that on the trap line, you ate what you caught. And if you didn't catch anything, you went hungry. Well, I'd starve, simple as that, Morgan had said. But then she'd been curious to see how long she might actually survive if she were out there on the land by herself. This was before she'd learned to catch prairie chickens. How long does it take to starve to death? She Googled. She went deep into the scattered files of her brain and retrieved the information. A person could go 30 or 40 days without food. The human body survived that long because it pretty much started eating itself for nutrients. 30 or 40 days was a long time. If only Eli could drink water, he'd have so much more time to find his soul and figure out a way to get it back into his body. But he could not drink water, and the human body could only go about 3 days without it. It worked out. Morgan had precisely that many days before Katie and James woke up on Earth. But she would much rather have had the 30 or 40 days, even if it meant getting caught by Katie and James. As it stood, she'd be going home in mere days with Eli alive or Eli dead. The thought sent a chill across her body. At long last, Morgan arrived in Misewa, but even then she didn't stop running. She sprinted past longhouses and surprised villagers and headed straight for Arik's dwelling. Morgan burst into Arik's longhouse, shouting, "Arik! Arik, I'm back, Arik!" She stopped in the middle of the living room beside the fire, which was burning bright, and looked around anxiously. It was just as it had been when Ochak lived there, except for the collection of Eli's pictures Arik had hung up all over the walls. She hadn't made any other changes while Morgan and Eli had been absent. All the time they'd been gone while traveling to the past. But where was Arik? Morgan knew she wasn't out on the land because the fire was burning. "Arik!" She heard rustling in the other room, then soft footsteps. She saw Arik's sharp fingertips appear first, curling around the edge of the doorway, then her ears slowly inching into view. And finally, Arik stepped into the living room, beaming. "Morgan!" she cried. "I could hardly believe it was you when I heard your voice. It's been so long." Arik rushed over and gave Morgan not a squirrel hug, but a bear hug. And Morgan got so caught up in it, she was so happy to see her old friend that she forgot why she'd rushed there in the first place. "Where on a ski have you been?" Arik asked. Morgan looked fondly at the animal being, even though she and Eli had been with Arik's younger self just 2 days ago. It had been a while since they'd seen present-day Arik. You need to catch up if you sort of know what's happening there. They went back in time and it's the second book. "I was here," Morgan said, "just not now." Arik ended the hug and held Morgan at an arm's length. She didn't need to say anything. Her facial expression alone demanded further explanation. "Do you remember before the light time when we were here? You were living in Otakwasi. The great bear destroyed it and you fought with us against..." "Yes, I remember that," Arik said. "I also remember that I was never supposed to speak of it. You were never supposed to know that you've been to the North Country before." "I know you weren't supposed to tell us," Morgan said, "but it's not a secret anymore. Remember when we were leaving? When Eli and I told you and Ochak we were going to come back one day so we could save Misewa together?" Arik nodded. "I literally just did that yesterday." "No way," Arik gasped. "Yes way. Crazy, right? So crazy. Nuts even. And not the kind I like to eat." Morgan laughed and hugged Arik all over again. "Oh, I've missed you so much." She rubbed her hand against the fur on the back of Arik's neck. They kept hugging until everything from the last day pushed into her brain. "Eli," Morgan said, breaking off the hug. "What about him?" Arik said. "How awful of me that I didn't even notice he wasn't with you. I've missed him just as much." "He's back at the great tree." "What? Why? Afraid I'd be mad that you two were gone for so long, I bet?" "He's a sensitive one, that boy." "No, that's not it at all. We fell asleep at the tree and..." Morgan finished speaking through tears and heaving breaths. "Mr. Peo took his soul." Morgan recounted the entire story to Arik, every sad detail, leaving out only what had led her to go through the portal and do something as reckless as sleep on the roots of the great tree, finding out that her mother had died. She didn't feel ready to talk about that. And in any case, there was not enough time to discuss it, even if she'd wanted to. So Morgan skipped that part and, to finish, explained that Emily, a human the village could trust, was watching over Eli right now. "I need to save him, Arik. There has to be a way to save him. You have to know a way. You're so old. You know so much." "Dear one," Arik said, "I will help you in any way that I can. I will follow you to the ends of the ski to save your brother, but all my years have taught me nothing about this. There's only one thing I can think to do." There you go. Thank you. Was it? I think I chose wisely. Oh, thanks, Sean.
All right, are we ready for me to start grilling him? Ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so first of all, I've known Dave since I invited him to my school, Beaumont, where two of the lovely ladies in the front here used to attend. And I remember when you came and the kids were completely enraptured with the stories you were telling, and you read them something that you were just working on it. So they got to hear something that was still in a draft stage. And I remember the stories you told about your older son golfing. Like, you just have a really amazing way of connecting with an audience. And that comes across in your books too. And I'm not going to keep complimenting you because I know you want me to make fun of you. Okay, but teachers who are in the audience, and I'm sure there are quite a few, probably, hopefully, have connected with Dave at some point, and he is just an amazing person to have come out to your schools. Okay, ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go. So the first thing I want to talk about is about dreams, because those feature both literal and figuratively in the book. So I'm curious if you remember your dreams.
I do, just like generally, and I mean, I think I'm like anybody else. Like there's dreams that I have that upon waking kind of blur out and fade away. There's dreams that I wake up and I'm, in the middle of the night, and I think I'd like to forget that one. And then I do get some like scenes or inspirations or things that come from dreams that sometimes if I am thinking of it, I'll reach beside my bed and I'll make a note of it in my phone. But other than that, like I don't remember many of them. I do have some like recurring ones, but but other than that, I think there's nothing special about the dreams that I have, but I am fascinated with them,
And how they work.
Yeah, exactly, and what they mean, like
right.
what's
And
the next
that's
question?
kind of where I was going to go with it, because when Arik says dreams are a way of knowing, I really loved that, and I want, can you explain that a little bit?
I think it's just like your unconscious mind working things out that you've experienced while you're awake in your waking life, and it's just your mind sorting through things that you need to either that you need to get through or understand or just like kind of parse out and like or just deal with and I think that your body does a lot of work while you're asleep, and your mind doesn't isn't excluded from that. So that kind of idea of dreaming and then having those dreams actually mean something and communicate something to you is something that definitely I wanted to play with for the the entire series. I think dreams factor in, I think, in almost every one of the books in some way. So a big time in the Stone Child.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I just, especially how you connected Morgan's experiences. I thought that was really beautiful because it keeps coming. You're such a good writer, Dave.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
By the way, now the award you won with, now you beat me for that one, so
We're not going to talk about who's won what awards. So I do have a question, and it is, so Jill has the best Instagram or Twitter because your son James often wakes her up in the middle of the night with questions. Where are you? Like, what? So how come he's only ever waking up her? It's like 2:57. You can just sleep right through these questions? Dave, honestly.
I do not remember one of these questions, but I find out about them when she tweets about them. I'm sleeping, so I'm there on the other side. But no, James is James likes me.
So that's what
he's also,
lets you sleep and ask Jill.
But on the hierarchy of Jill is he'll go to Jill.
Right.
So in the night he'll come in and crawl in and ask Jill a question or two, and then I almost use it as a gateway to kind of get into for cuddles, I think. But interestingly enough, all the questions that James has asked Jill, some of them are actually really profound, and especially like some of the questions he had last year when with unmarked graves being discovered, and he had questions about that, and so all those questions I've actually kind of compiled and I've worked into a picture book that I'm working on.
So you're using Jill's lack of sleep
Yeah.
to fuel your, that's
Yeah.
pretty much
Monopolizing
marriage
your lack
summed
of
up,
sleep,
right?
yeah. She'll get, you know,
You could maybe
she'll get
dedicate the
credit for
book
it.
to her.
Yeah, well, but she may, you know, she doesn't actually like when I do that. Yeah, but she may, maybe I'll say it by Jill and Dave. But yeah, no, I said this, it's coming out like I think in a couple of years, but I did use those questions in a picture book. That's it'll be my 4th one, but yeah, that's coming up. So
I'm doing the math on that.
2024,
So there's a
2025.
third one that nobody knows about?
No, I can talk about that one actually.
Oh, you can.
Yeah, my 3rd picture book is coming out in the spring.
Mhm.
It's called The Song That Called Them Home, and it's actually about Misewa little people in the Cree culture. So it's like very inspired by Murray Sendak and a picture book called Outside Over There, which my mom had and we read when I was a kid. So yeah, that so it's a very creepy book too. But like the Murray Sendak is a creepy book, but also this one is a little bit creepy, but
That's
a
amazing.
little bit of a change of pace.
What do you like
Yeah.
writing better? I know people probably ask you that question all the time, but
I-
adult books and graphic novels and like.
I like the challenge of anything. Like I like the challenge of writing something that connects with people more than anything. And you know, I like the challenge of trying something new. You know, I'd never written middle grade fantasy before when I started to write the Barren Grounds, and but I guess I would have to say that my favorite is writing picture books. And it's because it's so hard. Like, you know, it's way harder than you would ever think. And because every word has to be just exactly perfect. And I think that what's almost as hard as writing the end of a trilogy. You know, this segueing back to the Stone Child, but it is like trying to figure out a way to kind of cap everything off and do fan service, but also do justice to the characters and you know, do all those things. So yeah, I mean, every book is hard and every genre of form is hard, and I enjoy that. So you know, I like challenging myself to try something new.
Yeah. So okay, did you always have this trilogy plot arc mapped out, or did you have to change it once you realized you were going to do 6 books?
So okay, so I had the trilogy planned. So if there are things that are mentioned in the Barren Grounds that I either answer, and I knew I was going to answer in book 2 or book 3. And I think it's also some of it is like, you know, when you mention something in any story, you ought to bring it back to that at some point. And so when I mentioned, you know, for example, Bigfoot in the Barren Grounds, you know, I better put him into a book at some point down the road. And so one of the main antagonists in the Stone Child is Bigfoot. But yeah, I had the whole thing planned out. So I knew exactly what the last scene would be in the Stone Child when I started writing the Barren Grounds. So, and I talk a lot about like in stories like earned moments, and you know, and I really feel like the end of the Stone Child is like a you know, almost like a 700-page earned moment, which I really loved, and proud of the ending of Stone Child. But so I had it all planned out. Now there's things that happen in the stories that it surprise you that the characters do, and you have to figure out interesting ways to address problems. But all the main beats and points and connections I had planned out from the start.
Do you do it like really organized like that? Like with because it's a huge thing to tackle, to write 3 books with character arcs, and you got multiple characters. So how did you, like, how specific were you?
Very specific. I did actually just did a presentation on this in Berkeley, down in California this summer, and it was like writing a middle grade trilogy, or in how to do it. And it's really like looking at you know, the story structure of each book, but also the structure of a trilogy, and you have to like plan all of that out. So it's like the micro of 3 books and macro of the entire trilogy. And you have to, so I had to plan for all of that all together. And to answer the second part of that question, I didn't know it was going to be book 4, 5, and 6. So when the Barren Grounds I think we thought the Barren Grounds would do quite well.
We did okay. You know, it did okay.
It did way better than we thought it would do, well, at least for me, I think. But I didn't think it would do as well as it did. And when it did that well, they asked me if I wanted to do, you know, more books in the series, and I wouldn't have done it if I didn't have something to say, because I think as much as this is like a fun series, which I hope kids really enjoy, and you know, I think each book also has something important to say, and if I didn't have anything to say, I wouldn't have done it, and so I had more to say, And so we did book 4, then book 5, and now it's going to be 6 books. And the next 3 books are going to be from Eli's perspective. Is going to be the difference. Yeah.
Awesome.
So the question was like, how can Eli open portals? And then I built the next trilogy based on that question.
That is very cool.
Yeah.
You know, I find it like, I don't think of it as fantasy because the animal characters seem so real.
Mhm.
Like the way you write Arik, he's just super engaging. Did you ever read Kenneth Opal's Sunwing series? Just say yes, just say yes.
Oh, yes.
Maybe he's watching like we don't know.
Yes, Kevin,
Yes,
yes.
of course you did. When I read those books to my kids, they forgot we were reading about bats. And that's kind of how I feel when I'm reading yours.
Mm.
So do you think of it as fantasy? Because you tie in the realistic fiction. To me, the realistic fiction story is just as strong, or for me, maybe stronger, because I really love how Morgan's changed.
Mhm.
So what do you think of it? Like, you think of it as fantasy?
I'm cognizant of the fact that it's fantasy, but I feel like you've done a really good job if the fantasy world almost feels more real than the real world,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so you're right, like with the animal being characters, I really want kids and I think a lot of adults read middle grade too, but I want you to feel as though, you know, Ochek is a real person. I want you to, when you're done reading the book, I want you to miss the characters as though you just spent time with them and they're really real. And I think if you've done that, then you've done a pretty good job. And so I do feel like for me, when I'm writing it, I spend more time in making sure that, you know, Misewa and the North Country feel like real places.
Yeah.
And because I know that Earth's real, unless you think it's the Matrix or something, but like, but so I want both to feel like real, like a place that you'd want to and could visit, you know, in some way. So
If people in the audience had the opportunity to go to Misewa, would you go? Hands up. Oh, wow. Okay. So apparently Winnipeg winters haven't scared them. Like they're all willing to go.
it depends on the season that you go there.
That's true.
Winter
Okay.
stuff.
So school starting soon. On my wall, I'm posting this quote from the book. Age is wisdom, experience, and knowledge. Talk to me about that, and how do you feel about aging? And we all know you collect superhero figurines. So don't try and like oversell your love of toys.
No. I don't like aging. I don't like, you know, I'm obviously doing it.
Whether you want to or not, unless you discovered them.
You know, what I noticed most is like, I do a lot of school visits, and when I was starting out my career, and I still do a lot of them, but I didn't have like I don't think I often had a beard back then, and I had like darker hair, and so younger kids ask the really funny questions and the best questions, and they always ask how old you are. Like, so they're like, Mr. Robertson, how old are you? And I always get them to guess because it made me feel good, because I knew that I looked younger than I was. So they'd always say like, you know, oh, you're 22, 23, and I was like, I love you, thank you, you know. And because I was really like, you know, late 30s or early 40s. Now I don't like that question anymore, because I still ask them, but you know, how old do you think I am? And now it's like
Right.
60, 55, 100. So in that way, you know, I don't think I'm really aging that gracefully, but I think like in terms of like experience, you know, I feel like I have more to offer, not just in my work, but like in the other work that I do, whether it's journalism or public speaking, whatever it might be, or even just like mentorship. You know, I feel like that's a responsibility now that I have as a writer, is as someone who's been around for 13 years and has been doing this for a while. I want to like, I don't want to say give back, but I want to open doorways for younger writers to be able to be successful as well. And that's something I really am working hard at doing more things for. And I feel like I don't think often that I know what I'm talking about, but then when I start talking about things that I've done, then I realize I know more than I think that I do. So there's actually more that's going to come out about that in the next year. But I really feel like a big focus of my career now is going to be making sure that young Indigenous writers have opportunities like I have. And that's really important for me to make sure that our young kids and young writers have a platform to share their truths and their stories.
That's amazing. That totally deserves a round of applause. Okay, so this is a question that I did with my class last year. So I do fangirl Dave, despite the fact that I know him as like a human and I've met his kids and I've met Jill, but like I have the kids listen to the podcast QAO, and we read your picture books, which I think are incredible. And then, so the kids all know you. We even do a nonfiction article that you wrote for CBC Kids. So they're like, okay, Mrs. Nelson, like, really? Another thing by Dave Robertson? And then I name dropped too. I'm like, my friend Dave. Yeah, right. So I feel very cool. So the question that we studied last year was, how are you a good ancestor? And that's how I tied in a lot of your work, because I think that ancestor concept and being a good ancestor shines through in a lot of your work. So I'm curious if you're consciously doing that. You just talked about the young Indigenous voices, and I feel like there's a connection there.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, first of all, I should say that I don't really think much of myself in terms of, you know, that I have any sort of like, I don't think that I have any sort of like huge lasting impact on the world. I don't try to think of myself in that way, but
I think everybody here would probably disagree. But
I do feel like I try hard to at least like make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that I was raised well by my parents. And I think both my parents, you know, one of the things that they've really tried to instill with me is just being good, like being kind to people and trying to, you know, do good in the world. And so I think about legacy, I guess, and not just like, and so what I can leave behind when I'm gone that will last, not in the way that I'm remembered, but that other people can
make an impact.
Yeah, can like learn from or pick up from, or and maybe do some good in the world as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I write mostly for kids, is because I look at the impact of children and everything that they are capable of and everything that they will do.
Mm-hmm.
And so in my work, the more I write, and I think, and that's why I get a question of why do you write so much or how, whatever, but the more I write, the more kids learn from the books that I write. I feel like the better off we'll be, not because of me, but because of the kids, you know, and kids are far more positioned now to make this world a better place to live in than we were even like 10 years ago. And a lot of that is because books and the books that they're reading, what they're learning from them.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot about that more than anything is like, what can I write that leaves behind something that helps kids do something that will help make their community a better place to live in.
Okay, I was joking that I was going to make you cry, but I think you might make me cry because that's amazing. And it's like, it does speak to the power that a writer has and what your books are doing. So I'm so proud of you, Dave.
There's a lot, well, I would say there's a lot of like really incredible writers out there in Canada, including you. But like we're living in a really good time right now for not only Indigenous writers, but like marginalized writers. And those are really important stories. And to be someone who can promote others and to lift them up and to share their work. And, you know, I think that we didn't have that before, you know, and I think that, so I think a lot about that. And we have another really amazing young writer in the audience, my dear friend Jen, who right there, who is an incredible writer and artist. And you know, so you know, people like her, we should be reading her stuff and looking up to the young people and she's not that much younger than me, but like, you know, but that's, you know, that's what I think a lot about those things.
Yeah. I just want to ask one more question, then I have some short snappers, and then it's audience questions. Okay, so one part of the story that I was curious about was, and I don't want to give anything away, but Morgan goes on a trip in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just curious about like, because you've gone on the same trip.
Mhm.
So how,
Is this what the tissue was before?
no, well, no.
Okay.
No, I was just curious about how you describe that journey and, well, if you do cry, that's okay. But like, it's a physical journey, but it's also so much more.
Yeah.
Was it hard for you to write that?
No, I don't, it wasn't hard to write it. It was emotional to write it. You know, and I think for me, what I wanted to do was this dichotomy of, you know, having written a series that primarily was about another world, another dimension, and then the idea of like this other place in our world that would feel like that to so many people, you know, and
Yeah.
so I wanted to kind of play with that construct a little bit, but also at the same time having it where Morgan is going to somewhere that's familiar to her, even though she's never been there before. And that's how I felt, you know, when I went with my dad to the land, and I wanted to kind of like try to write so that it felt that way for Morgan too.
Yeah.
And so it was a connection, a moment of connection, both spiritual and physical, and about, you know, family and community and about the ancestors and how they live within us, and give us that connection, or foster that connection within us to the places that they were, if we return to those places. So it was really it's my favorite part of the book. It's also at the end of the book.
Yeah.
So I can't say much about it, but like I am very proud of that ending. And but it wasn't hard to write. Like it was just like, more than anything else in the series, that was just like a flow of emotion and love, you know, and I tried to just like put that onto the page.
It's an excellent book. It was my personal favorite, and I'm not just saying that because it's dedicated to me.
It actually really is dedicated to Colleen.
Okay, first quick short snapper. Which child would you trust to cook you dinner?
Oh.
5. So like that's a lot. Yeah, your own children, not like some random other person's child.
Lauren.
You trust Lauren?
Lauren.
And she's your second
But
youngest.
under Jill's direction?
No, on their own.
Oh, probably like probably Emily or Anna, I would say. Yeah.
Because they're older.
Just because they're not cool.
Okay, would you rather come to a book launch or your son's hockey final game?
Oh, son's hockey final.
Yeah, even if it was like they're down, it's out tonight. You'd still rather go to hockey.
Just being present, you know,
Yes.
I just love watching my kids do sports and stuff like that. So yeah, no, it's
Did you play hockey when you were little?
poorly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I did play 2 years of, I was a better basketball player.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'll take your report. Okay, do you like drafting or revising better?
I love revising.
Really?
I love editing. And I think that's something that happens with, like, you know, as you get more experience as a writer. Initially, I think editing feels very arduous and like, you know, feel defensive about it and stuff. But I think as you get further on in your career, you actually welcome that. And I really love like cutting up my work and stitching it back together and fixing it and making it better. So I definitely would say that revising is my favorite thing to do. Yeah.
Who's the next book dedicated to?
I think it's dedicated actually to what is it?
Like you've got
it's
so many
Emily.
books
It's Emily.
now, it's hard to
It's
figure out.
dedicated to Emily. Yeah, it's the Theory of Prose, which is coming out next month. It's dedicated to Emily. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got
My
an
oldest daughter. Yeah.
adult fiction book.
Adult fiction book coming out next month. Yeah.
And then in the spring, you've got the
The
picture
picture
book.
book. Yeah.
And then when does the 4th Misewa come out?
Summer next year.
Summer.
I'm already done it. I
So
finished it.
You'll just be camped out at McNally. Like, like launch
I'm here a lot
after.
anyway, but yeah, no, they keep having me.
Look how good I am at timing,
That's
right?
impressive.
Yeah, and you talked forever earlier, so. I'm kidding. Okay, so I believe
Long-winded.
John will now be running around with the microphone, asking or repeating questions.
Yes, indeed. So just one quick note before we start. As mentioned earlier, there will be a giveaway for the first 3 books in the Misewa Saga. So if you haven't already entered that giveaway and would still like to do so, please do so during the Q&A. Just put your ballot right in here. Now, if anybody is watching online and has a question, please feel free to write it in the chat. If anyone here has a question, just put your hand up. And we'll start with one question online from Norm, who asks, is Arik's personality based on you?
Is it based on me?
Yes.
Arik. Well, she's funnier than I am, I think, but I think what I would say is that there's a lot of you in the characters that you create. You know, there's probably more of me in like Morgan, maybe in some ways.
Yeah.
But you know, Arik is a character where I was really more inspired by trickster characters, and I think that she has some of those qualities, even though she's not a trickster character. But that kind of playfulness and that almost like feeling as an unreliable narrator in a way too. Like I think that so I think that is more what inspired me for Arik than me. But I think there's a bit of me in her as well. But she's definitely a lot funnier than I am. But
do you read your books out as you're writing them?
I do.
Yeah.
I do read them out loud, usually on like a later draft.
Yeah.
For flow.
Because you get good pattern between the characters, and that's always been one of your trademarks, is that good back and forth between, especially young characters.
But dialogue I used to really struggle with, and I think I've worked really hard. I think part of it is, as a writer in development, is looking at what you need to get better at, and then in working on it. I think dialogue's become a strength of mine now, but it was something I really struggled with when I was, earlier in my career. Yeah.
And was there anybody in this room that had a question? And just as a reminder, I'll ask you to ask me the question, and then I'll ask David.
It's like a telephone.
What's your favorite character, David?
I think that my favorite character is Morgan. I think Morgan is, like, first of all, a really complex character. She has a lot of depth to her, and her journey is one that I feel like people want to follow. And I also feel like she's a really believable character. Like sometimes she's not very likable, but she is always real. And I think in that way, people connect with her and really care for her. And I think, for a trilogy, you need a character like that, or else you're not going to stick around, right? So, so her growth over the course of 3 books, I think, is a fully realized arc, and I really love that about her. So I think Morgan's probably my favorite character of all of them.
It's the relationship her and Eli have, like that. It's so beautiful and heartwarming, and it's so funny too, because there's one point in the book where you say, like, something happened and it was only 2 days ago or 2 weeks ago. And I was thinking, like, when you're writing that, this is taking you years, but for the characters in the book, only a couple days has passed sometimes. But it all worked really seamlessly.
Thank you. And their relationship is one that I think also develops and strengthens and becomes something so much more than what it started with. And even with like Morgan and Emily, I think is another relationship that I worked really hard at making believable and developing. And but no, that's it's nice to hear that.
Do you have a favorite character?
All of them.
Oh, wow. Are you trying to get the next book dedicated to you?
We have a question from a virtual Colleen, who asks, my question was about how difficult or not it was to be writing the Misewa middle grade series while also writing an adult
novel.
Maybe you should tell them now that you cloned yourself. And there's actually like 3 days.
No, I think it's being able to compartmentalize a little bit, and spreading out the writing that you do throughout the course of a day. So, because you need to get into a different headspace. And right now I'm working on on 3 books. So I have to write one in the morning, which is like a nonfiction adult book. Then I have to work on book. What is it now?
Do you know that every writer watching is cursing you right now? God, Dave.
And then, I'm sorry.
That's no, it's inspiring. It's inspiring.
And then the middle grade book, I actually hockey book I'm working on is coming out in then I work on that in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And then in the evening, usually I'll try and knock off a few pages of a graphic novel script. So, and then I was working on editing book 4 for a time there, but you just have to, you can't, like as a writer, you know, I work full time now as a writer, but like, I can't do all that in an 8-hour span. So, you know, you do like an hour and a half in the morning, you do an hour and a half in the afternoon, you do an hour and a half in the evening, and then you just have to give yourself that space, because a lot of the job of a writer is actually thinking. You know, it's actually, you're writing while you're writing that passage throughout the day, and then when you get down to it and sit down on your desk and put your fingers on the keyboard, you've already been writing it for the, you know, those 3-4 hours, and so then you can put it on the page, right? So, but that's how I approach doing it.
So, like now I sort of forgive you for letting Jill be woken up by James, because it does sound like your brain is constantly going. One of my friends recently told me she was like powering through to get some books finished. And when she was done, she said she felt like she had concussion symptoms. Do you ever get that? Like, because it's your brain, you're squeezing your brain to get the best words out of it. It's draining too, I would imagine.
I think you just have to like, I'm not really good at this, but I think it's a bit this like self-care. I think it's like, you know, recognizing how much you can put into something. And for me, because I deal with like anxiety and depression and mental health stuff, that I really have to be cognizant of like that stuff.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes I'm not good at it, and sometimes I'm a little better at it, but and so there's good days and bad days, but that's what I have to be aware of. And so if I take on too much, then my anxiety, those sorts of things kind of creep up. And so the fall is a challenge for me, because I'm going to be all over the place. And so I have to really be aware of like my body and my mind. And it's the same thing, like from a day-to-day thing, where I just, you know, I'm really bad at saying no, but I think I have to get a little better at it sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what I have to be more aware of than anything.
Ah, there was a question over here. Yes. Is Emily going to be in the next 3 books more?
Well, in The Stone Child, Emily's like, I would say like one of the main characters. So she's like there for the whole time. And then she's definitely there for the rest of them. So she like joins the gang, and she's there for the whole series. So she's like there. So she's like as much in there as Eli and Morgan are in there. Yeah.
Are you happy about that? Yeah.
Emily's like a really fun character,
Yeah,
right?
I love
Yeah.
that.
She's a really fun
good
character.
addition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have time for 2 more questions. So we'll say one over there and the one over there in the pink. So we'll come over here first.
John, how about 3 questions? There's somebody
Oh,
in the front who loves berries.
Absolutely. And you as well. Perfect. I'll come to you. And then
That's
you.
like awesome.
Don't cut them off, John.
These are young, excited readers.
It's early.
Is Emily named after your daughter?
Yeah. Yeah. Daughter Emily, yeah. She's actually like, she's really big, and that's why the next book is dedicated to her. Good, really big inspiration for the main character in the next adult book. But yeah, Emily's definitely named after my daughter Emily.
Do
Yeah.
you think it's cool?
I don't know. Ask Emily. She's there. Is it cool, Emily?
You look lovely here. Emily, did you know you were going to be such an important character? No. And so, have you read the books?
Don't. It's okay. It's okay if you haven't.
Just so you know, my kids haven't read hardly any of my books. It's like a joke in the family. So
It's like this thing of you know,
your
for
dad
kids,
did it.
well, it is like for your kids. I think the older kids maybe recognize more what you do than the younger ones in some ways. But at the same time, it's my job to the kids, right? So it doesn't offend me at all when they haven't read something that I've done.
I actually have a super funny story though about Emily, and I'm just remembering this now. One of my very first school visits was at your elementary school, and your Sugar Falls had just come out. Like our books both came out at the same time, and I'm doing the talk, and you, Emily, put up your hand, and you're like, "My dad's a writer," and he, and it was you, and like,
Aww.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
So great that you're here tonight. So she was super proud of you when she was like, how old were you, 5 or 6?
Yeah.
A long time ago. Yeah, anyway, she's very, very proud daughter.
Well, I'm proud of my daughter. So.
How long did it take for you to write the
How long did it take for you to write The Stone Child?
Each book has been a bit easier. I mean, they're hard. It's hard to write a book, but the Bearing Grounds is very hard because I was at the same time as writing the book, I was trying to learn how to write middle grade because I hadn't really done it before. And each book progressively since then has gotten a little bit easier because I've gotten a little better at middle grade. So, The Stone Child would have taken me about 3.5 months to write the first draft, and then I'm working on perfecting it with my editors for probably about 8-9 months after that. So I would say like a year total, almost a year total. We're working on the book for. So it is a big, really big undertaking. But that's, typically I think a book is going to take 9 to 12 months to when you start writing it to when it's publishable. Yeah.
But it's kind of funny because you were also working on multiple other projects at the same time. So
yeah,
if you just focused on one book, could you do it? Or do you think you need the other things happening?
I would prefer to have one project.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I like putting work out there into the world.
Mm-hmm.
There's a worry that people will get sick of me, but
no, Dave, trust.
But like for me, obviously if to focus on one thing and give, but I think I guess I worry about saturation of like quality, but like I try to do my best with each one of them.
Yeah. Well, like I said, The Stone Child was chef's kiss.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we've expanded it to 2 more questions. So I'm going to run over here and then run back right over there.
How many questions do you think we could get John to keep?
Let's just
come on, guys, help us out.
Make him run around.
Are Katie and James going to find out about the portal?
Oh, how does such a ask that? Let me see that child. That is a good question. Dang, I wish I'd asked that. That's who you should have had up here.
I know. You did a good job.
Okay.
She might have been better, but you did a good job.
Yeah, I think she did.
I can't answer that because it would be a big spoiler. There are some things that happen in portal stories that are typical for generally for portal stories, and some things I try to do differently. So, but it would definitely be interesting if one of them found out and what would happen. So, they may find out.
Or they may not.
In book 4, but they may not. I don't know.
Oh, I'm so intrigued. Like I wasn't going to read book 4 right now.
Oh,
just kidding. Okay, let's keep John running.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for somebody who's just starting to write their own book?
Well, I mean, main thing is not to give up. You just keep writing. When I started writing, I didn't get published till I was like, 33, 33, and you do it because you love it, I would just like take off like chunks of it per day. Don't think you can do it overnight, and just never give up and just keep working at it until you have that last sentence finished, and then the real work begins where you kind of hone it, refine it, but it's a really good feeling when you finish something like that, and when you get it, it's like a feeling that you want again, and so I would just say like just keep writing it, and don't worry about how good it is now, right? Because the first draft is never going to be that good. The goal is how good can you make it, with how hard you want to work on it, right? So, but I would just keep writing. I started off, when I started off, like I'm nothing special about me, I just work hard. So, I just write.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing special about you, Dave. Just your run-of-the-mill father of 5. Yep, that's Dave.
Oh.
But there is something, like I agree that it's about determination and it's about hard work, because really that is. It's like a marathon.
It's a big part of it, yeah.
If you just keep running, eventually you're going to finish the marathon.
Yep.
But I also think that you being able to connect to an audience, and you're able to do that in lots of genres, I think that's really like special, because there are lots of books. There's not lots of books that are the #1 bestseller in Canada for like 2 years running. So, you know, that's kind of,
That's the Meryl
it
Thieves,
speaks
isn't it?
volumes, get it? Speaks
Yeah,
volumes.
I got it, yeah.
Yeah, I know, well, Meryl Thieves is another like amazing book
Yeah,
too, though,
That's-
right?
Yeah,
It's great, there's so
That's
much
incredible.
room for lots of
Mhm.
beautiful writing.
absolutely,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay, John's resting.
Any more running?
He's
We have
catching
now,
his breath.
we've come to the close of the event, so I'm going to offer you both the opportunity to offer closing words, but first, I believe we have a draw to do.
Hey. Can I pull the thing?
Oh, of course.
I want to take your job. I'm so nervous about picking someone.
Drum roll.
Okay. Age. I have to take out my glasses to read this.
That's funny because I have glasses to read now.
Aubrey Isaac. Aubrey Isaac.
Awesome. One, two,
Hey. I know you. Met me right before the launch. Congratulations.
And there you are.
Wow.
Hey.
And now we'll turn things over to you both, and then I'll have some thrilling procedural notes.
I'll go right.
You go first.
Okay.
Sure.
Well, Dave, thank you very much for inviting me to do this. I was thrilled when I got the invitation. I was more thrilled when Tundra sent me the book because I got to read it before it officially came out. And it's phenomenal, just like all your writing. And I'm very proud to be your friend and to also know that you come from Winnipeg and you're inspiring kids all over the country and hopefully the world one day. Because I do think like world domination is something that you actually have in your game plan. So thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank Colleen, who is a good friend of mine, and also, by the way, is a writer who you should be reading. And I can't say that you were legitimately my first choice to host. So I told Evan, like, I want to get Colleen in it. So thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. And you know, I then just, I guess this thanks to you. I wouldn't be able to do what I do without you. I'm so lucky and so grateful, you know, to have people that actually read what I do. And I just one quick thing, you know, there was a time last year or earlier this year where one of my books was getting pulled from a school board, and we don't need to talk about it. What got me for that was not that it was pulled, because that will happen, you know, as a writer. Like sometimes your book will, you know, be controversial at some point. I don't know why the Great Bear was, but what got me was that there's so many people that wrote that school board and supporting me, and I just tried to you know, just be kind to people and build relationships and make connections, and that means like so much to me, and so that is a part of that community, and I really appreciate you coming out to support me and Colleen tonight. It really means a lot, so thank you so much for coming here.
Thank you both so very much. We'll now be moving along to the signing portion of the evening, so I'll ask you all just to remain seated for one moment while we safely transport David to a table right beside the cash desk. At that point, you'll be able to descend, get all your books signed. We have books for sale at the cash desk. There are books on the table. Get your books signed before you pay for them. Just please pay for the book at some point, preferably before you leave the store. I should point out that David will be back here on the hot seat on Wednesday, September 14th to launch his adult book, his novel, The Theory of Crows from HarperCollins, which is fantastic. He'll be talking to Ben Sigurdsson that night. And then on November 2nd, your host with the most, Colleen Nelson, will be teaming up with Kathy McIsaac to launch If You Can Dream It, You Can Do It, how 25 inspiring individuals found their dream jobs. And then we'll turn the table on November 10th, where David will be interviewing Tasha Spillett-Sumner, the incredible picture book author, about her new gorgeous book, Beautiful You, Beautiful Me. So thank you all so very much for joining us. Thank you to Tundra Books. Thank you to Penguin Random House of Canada. Thank you to you wonderful people here. Thank you to everybody watching virtually. This video will remain live if you want to watch it or share it with anybody. But please join me in thanking one final time two of our favorite people, David Robertson and Colleen Nelson. Thank you.